Welcome to the WordPress Photography Podcast, the podcast for photographers who want to learn how to get the most out of WordPress to grow their photography business. You don't need to be a geek to understand WordPress. Settle back and listen as we show you how. Now, here's your host, Scott Wyden-Kivowitz.
Why did the photographer get into an argument with the curator at the art gallery? He wasn't in the right frame of mind.
No!
Welcome to episode 96. My name is Scott Wyden-Kivowitz, and I am joined by my guest, Jason Groupp. I've known Jason for many years. We met originally, I don't know if you remember this. We met originally when I was working for Mac Worldwide Warranty and in the retail store they have in New Jersey. And you came in to have some of your Canon cameras repaired. So
Wait,
that's how we met originally.
What store? Where?
When I worked at Mac Camera and Video Service in Springfield.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's how we first met.
Huh.
That was a long time ago. If you've ever met Jason Groupp, it was most likely a life-changing experience. You won't forget his GQ-ready outfit. And if you're watching this, you will see what I'm talking about. With the perfectly balanced bow tie. Hailing from New York City, he shot lots of weddings around the globe and is the founder of IHNY, which you'll learn about in a little bit. Jason ran the halls of WPPI for a few years, then moved to St. Louis to study the fine art of brisket barbecue rub, which sounds delicious. After a 6-year hiatus as an entrepreneur, he decided working for others isn't for him. With the camera back in his hand and a new venture to help photographers, he's back in his happy place, helping to keep the industry he loves so much grow stronger than ever. So welcome to the show, Jason. I'm happy to chat with you today. This is going to be a really fun discussion.
Well,
and educational.
That's a lot of pressure, but okay. Thanks for having me on, and it's good to see your face. It's been a long time, and yeah, Jersey strong.
Yeah, for sure. So what's going? I mean, I've mentioned a few things that you've got some things in the works and whatnot. First, can you share what IHNY is for anybody who doesn't know, and then tell us what's going on with you otherwise.
Sure. So, a quick history on that bio that you just introduced me to. So, I ran a studio called IHNY, I Heart New York Photography, and it was lots of weddings. And the IHNY kind of came out of, we were doing lots of engagement sessions and featuring New York City as the backdrop. New York City is is my town and the place that I grew up in and from when I was a little kid. And, being there, I really got to know the ins and outs of New York. And I started, really creating these engagement sessions that, featured this heart and soul of my clients. We kind of expanded into like tourism and families. And we found ourselves shooting people from all over the world, doing these mini engagement sessions. And it kind of blossomed from there. The guys who run it now have kind of taken that to a new level, and I still bounce in and out as the founder, they call me, and advise them. And it's amazing to see what they've done. They do hundreds of sessions a year featuring New York City. So that's what IHNY is. Sorry, I've got a cup and a half of coffee in me, so I'm going to talk like a New Yorker now. So from there, I was really, really super duper fortunate to get offered a position at WPPI. I also worked on Photo Plus in New York. And it was a really, really amazing experience to work with so many photographers across 55 countries, doing it in Las Vegas and in New York City. And it was a real dream job to work for them, helping to create their conference and help with some of the direction of that. From there, I took a job out here in St. Louis, moved my family out here. We were looking for something, to raise my kids in a different atmosphere, and I was looking to kind of slow things down a little bit. Wanted the dream of buying like a nice big house and, out in the suburbs, and was looking for a change. We love St. Louis. It's a great city. I've met some amazing photographers. It's been great from knowing all these people in the East Coast, and now getting to know people in the middle has been really, really neat. So that's what I'm doing now. And then, we can kind of get into, what I'm doing now.
You and I both feel it's important to to build your brand, of course, but not only as a photography business, but as a personal brand, right? You're known in the photo industry outside of just being a photographer, an educator, an entrepreneur, a leader. So can you share some of your thoughts on building a brand? What are your thoughts on that, the importance of it?
I mean, I think, when you're building a brand, it needs to be, the easiest thing to do is what are the things about your personality that shines? What are the things that is unique to yourself that, calls to you? And usually they're right in front of you. So, I started wearing a bow tie to weddings many, many years ago. And, it was kind of out of a joke to start, but, everyone loved the graying, I'm really gray now, but the graying guy with the bow tie at the wedding. And, things that I discovered about, you put the bow tie on and you're automatically, people think you're smart. It's not true. It's just a bow tie. It's smart because you can tie a bow tie. It's really not that hard. It's just it's just like tying a shoelace, but backwards and in a mirror. So I think, when you find those things, to learn how to embrace them and not be embarrassed by them. And a lot of times it's just embracing a flaw that you might have, right? So I think it's important to identify things that make you unique, especially as a creative person. We are looked to for our uniqueness, and really embracing those things. So that's and then, as I get older now, I just discovered these are things that about me that I'm not going to change, and just owning those things.
Yeah. It's funny, regarding the bow tie and branding, there's two people in the photo industry. I mean, of course, there's going to be a ton more who wear bow ties, but when I think of notable people that I'm friends with, I've interacted with, that there's a lot of people with bow ties, but there's two that have always stood out, and it could be because both are photo educators as well. But you and Levi Sim, right? Two people who, when you think photographer and bow tie, Levi's even gone to the length of incorporating the bow tie into his logo now.
Yeah.
So he embraced it 100%. It's so anyway, I mean, the little things really do make an impact. It's
much more than you would expect, and and I think when people recognize you for those things, it's kind of cool when that happens.
Yeah. So impact messaging, right? So there's the physical part of branding. There's then this sort of audible and text part of branding, where you always want to speak a certain way. You always want to talk about yourself, about your clients a certain way. You want to present yourself a certain way. And these messages that we put out there in the world, whether they're to leads, to clients, to just anybody that you're talking to at a party, right? You're talking to, if you're a family photographer, everybody is your potential client, right? So these messages you put out there are very important. They need to be clear. They need to stick to our brand. They need to portray us in the way that we want to be portrayed. Do you have any thoughts on maintaining a consistent message?
Yeah, actually, writing, as a photographer, writing was never really, my thing. And I did a lot with IHNY. We would do a lot of blog posts, and I go back and look at the grammar on some of those things now, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I think that would, as far as, other friends of mine, that would hold them back. I do find that millennials do it a little bit easier than the old Gen X guys do, but I think that's just because they kind of grow up, spending a lot more time writing. Even if it's on text, it just flows a little bit easier. But when I went to WPPI, I was I wasn't supposed to be in a marketing role. And I spent a lot of time kind of finessing the messaging that we would send out for email blasts and blog posts. And I was really fortunate to sit next to Jackie Tobin, the editor-in-chief of Rangefinder, and she used to have to edit a lot of my stuff. And she really helped me finesse those messaging. I would write a column every month for them, and it was really hard. It was 1,500 words a month, and she used to be like, you got to send me more than 1,500 words because I'm going to edit out 800 of them. I'd be like, okay. But in that process of a year, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, I really learned a lot from how to have that voice, but how to be a little more succinct with that voice. So it was really interesting. But more often than not, I found that finding that voice really just requires you doing it a lot. And if you're not doing it a lot, you can't find it. And don't be afraid to put something out there that isn't perfect.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Great advice. It's kind of what you would say as well to basically anything, whether it's branding, whether it's learning photography, whether it's creating blog posts, whatever, or even social Facebook posts, right? Whatever it is, the only way to get better at it is to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's such a simple message, right? But
yeah.
It really is the truth. The more you get it out there, the more you practice doing it. I used to joke with some friends of mine that I would write lots of, my daughter's about to be a teenager, so I'm warning her a lot about social media and stuff like that. And I say that, like, you can't ever put something out there that, you don't mean, but I often with my friends will write something and then delete it. And that's also good practice. So something you really want to say sometimes, but then, but all of that is good practice. So just spending some time doing some writing every day can never hurt you.
Even, and open up the notes app on your phone and start typing to yourself, right? Whether you share it or not, you gotta make that decision. But
don't share it if you shouldn't share it.
Right.
If there's ever a question, I shouldn't share this, don't do it.
When my father-in-law likes to say, when there's doubt, there's no doubt. So
that's good advice. Yeah.
You have moved in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Right. You stopped making photos for a while.
Yep.
And during your time working at WPPI and then on to other jobs after that, but you're back to client work again, back to some other projects that we'll talk about a little bit. You'll be able to share that. And you're now 50, correct?
51 on Sunday.
51.
Yes.
On Sunday. So can you talk about basically starting over, rebranding yourself, starting over with what you loved back in the beginning of your career and that you did for so many years before your changes, starting over, not only starting over as a photographer, shooting again, but in a brand new location. Can we talk about that for a bit?
Well, first of all, I don't recommend my career path for others at this point. Well, I take it back. Taking a leap of faith, even at my age, it has been a wonderful thing. Okay, so I left WPPI to go work for another company, and we moved our family out here. It was a leap of faith, and it didn't work out. It was bad from the very beginning, and I didn't expect that to happen, and it was not an active. Leaving one job to go to another it was on paper, it seemed like a great idea. It seemed like a good plan. And from the moment I got there, it was not good. So I made the best of it that I could for as long as I could. And then I completely blindsided, found myself out of a job. And so it's been a rough couple of years. Moving out here was a great decision. And like I said, we love it here. And we, as a family, I think, we needed a change. We needed to do something different, and seemed like a good idea. So making career changes, where I am, I've never worked for anybody else. So I've had, when I was younger, maybe in my 20s, I worked for other people, either shooting or really, I started shooting weddings when I was 17 for a local wedding photographer in New York. And I did it with him for a long time. And then I went to college, and then I started shooting on my own, and I kind of worked for this guy on the weekends. I pursued my commercial career. 15 years down the line, I found myself in a studio in New York City. I did that for a long time. So I never really worked for anybody else. So then going to WPPI, in my mid 40s, again, was a big leap of faith. you know, it was really difficult working in a corporate environment. And then came out here, and you know, I thought for working for a smaller company was going to work out as well. That just was other problems. So I found myself at 50, like, oh, well, okay, what am I mean, literally blindsided. I had no idea I was going to be out of a job. So, you know, I spent a couple months feeling sorry for myself, which what I think anybody would do.
Yep.
And then I just said, you know, sat down with my wife and I said, what am I supposed to do now? And, you know, I don't have a master's degree in, you know, anything, or even a bachelor's degree for that matter. I have an associate degree from an art school. So I'm completely unqualified outside of this industry. So I like to think of myself as a decent photographer. You know, Liz said to me, please don't go back to shooting weddings again. I don't want to be a wedding widow. And was happy that she said that, because I really didn't want to go back to shooting weddings again. But it's not like I'm not capable or I'm above that. It's just, it's really hard when you get to my age to, you know, relate to a bride or a groom, or certainly build a business from off the ground. So I didn't want to do that. But what I did is I said, you know, I do need to start shooting again, and I do miss shooting. And, you know, I think I'm a pretty good photographer. I survived many, many years feeding my family that way. So I opened a family portrait business, and I kind of took the same idea with New York City and just picking iconic New York City, iconic St. Louis locations, and kind of branded them in the backdrop of that. And, you know, being a family guy, I had access to lots of families. So I built a portfolio and built a website, and starting that all over again has been, a friend of mine said to me, it's not as hard the second time. And I was like, oh, okay, that is really, I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, you did all that other stuff before. You know what to do. You're not starting over again in that sense. You just need to, you know, you're in a different city, so you need to brand all that again. But he's like, you've got a URL. It's, you know, it's your jasongroup.com. You're going to use that same URL again. You've got 20 years of backlinks on that thing. And you know, you've got all that good juice on that. You work your SEO, build your portfolio, do your networking. And he said, you know, you're kind of starting from maybe a 2 or 3 years in point. And he was right. He was right in that sense. You know, it was easy for me to kind of jump back into that again, but it was hard. You know, the first 5 or 6 family sessions, I was like, what's wrong with this camera?
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I think the fact that you are now in your 50s, and the fact that you are a family man was obviously part of the reasons why you did not go back into weddings, but also part of the reasons why it's easier for you to get into family portraits now, because, you know, like you said, you are surrounded by families, and to get surrounded by additional families is even easier. Getting surrounded by, you know, younger couples that are just about to get engaged and then married is going to be much more difficult.
I don't have access to those people.
Yeah. So, I have to agree with what your friend said. I mean, yeah, of course it's not easy, but you probably had, you know, like you said, the website aspect made things a little bit easier. Your family life in general makes things easier. I'm sure there's other things that have made it easier, but I'm sure there's still some difficulties. What has been hard during this transition?
Well, I mean, hard during the transition.
Besides the camera not doing what you wanted to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, shaking the rust out of my camera, and you know, people used to ask me a lot, WPPI, do you still shoot? And I would say, you know, every time I pick up a camera recently, it's like I'm the, you know, and forgive me for this analogy, but like I'm the pro ball player who like broke his ankle, and then all of a sudden is expected to get up and bat, 300 again, right? So, and it doesn't. It takes a while to kind of figure those things out again. So that was a big struggle for me, and I think that it's been a joy getting back into it again. But I think the thing for me, you know, when you work for, you know, a company and you get that steady paycheck, you kind of settle into, you know, that, you know, a little bit of an ease, like I'm going to get a paycheck every week. But when you run your own business, it's a hustle every day. So it's a different mindset. It's a different, like, the way you run your business is different than you going to a 9-to-5 business. When you run your own business, you are working all the time, but you need to find how to compartmentalize that business. So like, my wife works full time, and, the dynamic changes when I'm self-employed. So, I'm responsible for picking up the kids after school, taking them to practices. Liz concentrates on her full-time job, which is, 9-to-5. I work outside of those lines. So like, I take the kids to school, I come back, I do some chores, I work on the business a little bit. The kids come home from school, I take them to practice, they get them dinner, and then I work from 8 to 11, right? So the hours are different, times are different. And again, getting back to, it's easier the second time. Like, I was easily able to go from here to here easily again. I'm now up, at night working, doing things. But the advantage is, I'm here for my family. It's a blessing. It's awesome. Like, I joke that I'm my kids' equipment managers, and, when they complain, I said, you can fire me at any point.
That's funny. So for anybody listening who's in St. Louis or watching, and you're in St. Louis, I feel like we as photographers should do what we can to help other photographers out, right? Yes, there is competition. Wherever you go, there's competition, but we're also a community of people who are hopefully all kind people that want everybody to do well. And there's more than enough business to go around. That is for sure.
Yeah.
So what I would like for anybody in the St. Louis area that is listening or watching and is a newborn photographer, a wedding photographer who does those full time and does not do family portraits, refer them to Jason, right? Refer them to Jason. He's getting back into it, right? I'm trying to help you out here.
No, appreciate it. Appreciate it.
But I'm also serious. Like me as a photographer who doesn't do. I have clients, but I'm not a full-time photographer.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly referring people to other photographers when either my schedule can't handle it, or when it's, I don't do newborn photography. I don't do wedding photography. So I'm constantly referring those to other people. I would hope that other people would pay it forward the same way that I do. So that's my plea to the listeners and watchers. But I also want to hear from you, Jason. What do you need help with? So I'm asking this not just because I want to help you, but also because other people in the same situation as you might need help with something they don't realize they need help with, right?
Yeah. So, I launched the family portrait business, and thanks for the plug. And St. Louis, jasongroup.com.
Two P's.
Two P's. St. Louis is a great city, and the community here is very strong. There's a St. Louis Facebook page, and people are willing to help each other out. It's very different than New York City. I had my friends in New York, but people do tend to network here a little bit more. They do help each other out. It's a different dynamic than New York City was. But it's a great community here, and these guys are doing a great job. I'm on the board for the Missouri PPA, and helping them plan their events. And it's a smaller event, but it's a great group of people who just looking to keep the community together. They're celebrating their 80th year this year, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So things like that, I have dove in, and if you're looking to. So here's some advice as an older person, looking to get involved in community. You need to seek out the community that's out there and see what you can do to be useful. So a lot of people are like, oh, I don't need, I just wish somebody would help me. And I'm like, you should go help them, right? Well, how can you be helpful? So those are the things that I've looked for. Like when I moved here to St. Louis, I reached out to the Missouri PPA. Hey, how can I help? What can I do? And, obviously, being in the industry, they were very receptive, for me to work with them. But, along those lines, like when I found myself without a job here in St. Louis, trying to figure things out, it was difficult thinking like, all right, do I want to look for another job? Do I want to start something over again? And that's what kind of was born out of the other project that I'm working on as well is, at if you're in your late 30s going into your 40s, in hindsight, looking at, what your options are, you really need to think about, what your plans are. You're planning for your retirement and, setting money aside. It creeps on you pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And, my 40s went by. It was like, oh, whoa, I'm 50. And then starting over, from the ground up, without any runway whatsoever, was a pretty jarring experience. But I can talk, about, what led me to my next project as well.
Yeah. The group, right? That's what it's called?
Group,
The
yeah.
group.
The group.
So before we get into that,
Yeah.
I have to ask, just because it's kind of, it's in my head, it's funny that you were such an important role in WPPI for many years, and now you're helping out with a PPA chapter, right? Which is just, so I have to ask. I have to ask.
Yeah, there's a little ironically, WPPI and PPA really tried to work hard to have a good relationship. I mean, obviously there is a competition there between the two shows, but
WPPI doesn't really have any local chapters, right?
No.
So,
and it's been interesting getting to know how those local chapters work. And I think there's a lot of things that, PPA has been around for a long time. A lot of people have not been happy about what, that they haven't really kept up with the times, and they're a little old school. But, looking in from the outside of where our industry is at right now, and how like some of these trade shows and conferences are struggling, is interesting. And I just got back from Imaging USA, PPA show. Very strong showing. They've had a lot of ups and downs over the years, but they've stayed the course. So they've said, this is our brand. This is what we do. We're not going to change things up a little bit. We're going to change things up a little bit here and there, but the bylaws, the ways that they keep engaged with their audience is really incredible. Their educational programs and, all of that stuff. It keeps people coming back every year. It gives them a reason, a thing to focus on. The craftsman degrees and the certifications, and all of that stuff has super old school stuff, but it keeps them coming back every year. So I was happy to work on the chapters. It was a little weird after working with WPPI after those years, but for me, it was really just being part of the community that I really cared about. It was really nice that they embraced me and stuff like that.
So when you reached out and you said, are you looking, do you need any help? Can anything I can help you with or whatever? Do they say, do you have any experience working for events?
No, they knew who I was.
All right, cool.
They knew who I was. And, it's funny because I had given them a couple of free passes every year to WPPI all the years I was there. And
nice.
Never really thought anything they would use it in their giveaways. So, again, there's a lot of crossover there, and it's been really fun working with those guys.
Yeah. Last year, I guess technically it was last year, February 2019. I spoke at the 70th anniversary of Connecticut's local PPA, their big event. Jennifer Rosenbaum spoke. Unfortunately, I had to miss her talk. I got there too late, but it was fun. It's the second time I've spoken for the Connecticut PPA chapter, and but they go all out. It's neat to see for a local chapter to do something so big. Like you wouldn't expect it from a local chapter.
Yeah, and I think that the local chapters are struggling right now to try and keep numbers up and keep them going, and I find the whole chapters really interesting. Their biggest complaint that I get from any of the chapters is we don't get enough help from PPA itself. Right. They really do operate independently of the organization, but they are supposed to follow certain rules. And PPA, if you're listening out there, that's the thing that I think is the future of their organization. And really, if you know a guy who could help you build those chapters, it would be me. I think that is, and I can kind of get into why I'm telling you that, because I think at my age, when you're looking for a new career job, some of the things that I read was that you need to carve your own path. I'm trying to carve that own path as I'm talking to you, but that's something that I've identified. Like, I think those chapters could be huge. You know, WPPI used to do these roadshows every year, and most people don't even know about them. At one point, they were doing, I think, 14 roadshows a year. And when I say that to people, they're like, oh my gosh, really? 14 cities a year they used to do besides Las Vegas. And when I got there, they were doing 6, and then they cut it to 4, and then they cut them entirely because they were not making enough money. But the day they quit those roadshows was the day that they started seeing dropping of their numbers every single year after that. And it was very hard to make that correlation. And, you know, you can't quote me on those things, but like, in my opinion, that's the reason why, you know, it became harder for them. But it's that year-round engagement that they were getting in those roadshows, and we used to give them a free pass to WPPI. So it was a pass-through to get them to come. And every person that I would meet before that would be like, oh yeah, I got a free pass that 1 year, and then I've been coming for 10 years. And that's the same thing with the chapters. The chapters, they belong to the chapters, they get involved, and they have to go to the Emerging USA show, right? It's giving your community a reason to be engaged. And I think that, you know, if PPA really wanted to bolster their numbers, pumping some life into that would really make a huge difference. I
agree. Yeah. You know, we've seen that with other organizations, that, you know, the local chapters have been striving, and then you see less from the big organization.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, you know, that would be great. And I'm going to make sure when this episode goes live that PPA sees this. So,
yeah, I mean, just an opinion from, you know, an old guy who's worked in the industry for a really long time.
Yeah. Who might have some experience, a little bit of experience in this genre.
But yeah, I tell you, since leaving WPPI, I've missed working in live events. And you know, again, I've enjoyed shooting and doing those things. I'm going to continue doing that now. And, you know, but in my opinion, it wasn't everything that I wanted to do. Working in this community has been, you know, my favorite thing to do. I've enjoyed it. And, you know, not working in live events like WPPI has been, you know, something that I've missed since the day I left. So even when I left, you know, even when I was blindsided here in St. Louis, I said to myself, that's really what I want to do. When I sat down with my wife, I said, is it time for me to start my own thing? Is it time for me to, you know, launch my own event? And I've been working through those ideas just because, you know, I'm unfortunately not sitting on a pile of cash to just say, hey, I'm going to build my own event.
So is this where the group has sort of come from? So let's talk about that. What is the group?
So in my drilling down of, you know, after feeling sorry for myself for a couple of months, I said, you know, let me look around to see if I really enjoy marketing. So, you know, is there a marketing job out there for me? Maybe I should try something out outside the industry. And, you know, I looked around for some different things, and, you know, because I'm not super duper qualified, you know, me not finding, and I'm doing all this research, like, you know, I'm literally doing Google search, like what to do when you're 50 years old, starting your career over, like really sad, like, you know, things. And I'm drilling down, and, you know, I read one really good article. It was like, what to do at this age. And you know, mine was all the way at the bottom, what to do at 50. And it said, you know, you're beyond the point of, you know, continuing education, going back and getting your master's or something like that's probably not your best bet at this point. But, you know, if you're left with no choice, or you're really close to doing it, you should go back and do that. But you need to work your existing contacts and figure out exactly what you want to do, and then just drill down and start doing it. And especially it became relationships. So you have met lots of people, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I know lots of people in this industry, and I've interacted with a lot of people, and I'd like to think that people are interested and interested in working with me. And this is part of the reason why, you know, like when I saw you, you know, you're doing this podcast and doing it. This is why I'm reaching out to you now, because I want to have this conversation with you. I'm letting the world know I'm open to opportunities, and I'm working on new things. That's part of, you know, my plan here is that, you know, I'm, you know, you're listening and you have an interesting project, I want to talk to you, right? I have some experience. I want to talk to you. But one of the things that I came across was like, all right, well, if I still want to start my own event, I need some help. So I found this website where you could book a call with Mark Cuban, or you could book a call with a CEO. And I'm thinking to myself, I've always been good at helping other photographers. I wonder, if I could do something like this. So I started drilling down on that. I realized that there really isn't a marketplace for photographers to help other photographers. There really isn't a place where you can go and right now there's somebody sitting at their computer and can't open Lightroom because their library is not working, or their Photoshop stopped working or something like that. And I'm like, I have a network of people that I would call and say, hey, I need help. But there's lots of people out there that don't have that network built in, who just need help right now. And that's what this idea was kind of born out of. And, again, I have worked with, hundreds, maybe thousands of photographers in our industry over the years. So I built something where they can book a call with a photographer or an influencer or, a writer, and you can schedule that call. You pay for the call. It creates a video conferencing call just like the one we're in right now. You can hang on to that, and then you can get some education from that person. And being my last name, it's the Groupp with 2 P's.com. And I'm looking to launch. The official launch will be probably first week of March, somewhere in that time. We're going to have around 100 influencers all on there with their offering to help. And then from there, if I build an event out of that, that would be wonderful if it takes off. I love the idea of one-on-one consultations with somebody, very personal. I think that our industry doesn't have a lot of that, where you can just get one-on-one consultations. And one of the things that we used to do on the road shows at WPPI, would do these portfolio reviews. At Photo Plus, we used to do them as well. I think they're really important things to get. And finding a mentor in your industry or a coach, I think, is really important. And this is my way of trying to make that happen. And it's been great.
Yeah. If this, builds up to where it potentially could, you could really have the group for the 365 days out of the year. There's always somebody available that you can book with, but then you could do the group live, where you've got keynotes from the influencers talking to all the attendees, but then also throughout the day people can book individual one-on-one in person meetings, portfolio reviews,
more experiential, more in depth. I think, this is just another way. There are hundreds of places that you can go and get education now, and, watch on video, and between YouTube and Creative Live and, all those other places that are out there. They're wonderful, but sometimes we just need to be able to ask a question about something. And I think that this is a great way. And I've gotten a ridiculous response, so well received from the educators in our industry. Everyone thinks it's a great idea, and it just provides a place where everybody can be. Later on, if there's a place where they want to promote a workshop, or, like you said, some webinars where there's specific education. But I think these conversations are going to be really neat that these people are having, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. So I've got a question about the booking process. Is it only going to be book it now for, let's say, Thursday at 3 p.m., or is it going to be a section where it says these people are available right now, where it's like on the fly for certain people at certain times or things like that?
I ideally would like to have, so good question. And I've kind of thought through that a little bit. I think it's organically going to need to work itself out a little bit, but I ideally would like to have 5 or 6 or 10 photographers, especially on the technical side, who are like available on demand. Like right now, their schedule is always open. I could book a call in an hour, right? I think it depends on the photographer's availabilities. What I'm going to encourage them to do is be available during business hours, or like, some photographers just in the evenings, so kind of spread it out over periods of time. And then I guess it'll be up to me to market, that the way that goes. But
right.
It would be great to have it where like, I'm hoping it's literally on demand, like call me.
That would be cool. That would be cool. I hear Facebook is currently testing a Facebook page feature where you could send a text message to the page, or maybe it's a Facebook group, I can't remember, where you can send a text message to the owner of the group or the page or whatever, and it goes to their Facebook Messenger, but it's a normal phone number that anybody can send a message to and just chat with. And you can do this sort of like, I'm available now, I'm offline, that type of thing. So yeah. I don't think it's open to everybody yet. I think it's, like I saw Jenna Kutcher. I don't know if you know who Jenna Kutcher is. Yeah. She's currently testing it out in one of her groups. So
I mean, those things, and I think part of this idea was born out of that. These Facebook groups are wonderful places, but I think that it's time to take some of these conversations a little more, not offline, but like
definitely one-on-one, not grouped to the hundreds of people.
Yeah, I mean, people are tired of I don't know what's happening with Facebook, but it's not as much fun as it used to be. And like I'm exploring ideas of going some like old school, like I think I'm going to put a forum on here, like super old school stuff where nice. I think that, it's time to kind of bring the conversation somewhere else, because right now Facebook is so fragmented. It would be great to have one place where these conversations are happening. So like a forum or webinars or something like that, where like people can really connect with just that subject and just go there. Because I have lots of friends that are I'm like, did you see this post on Facebook? And they're like, I took Facebook. I don't even go on Facebook.
Yeah. It gets too saturated very, very easily. Yeah. So I'm right there with you. I would love to be able to just remove the Facebook app from my phone if I didn't have to do it for work. I would remove it in a second.
I totally agree with you. And for photographers, it's a huge distraction if you're running your business. So like that's kind of goes along with my point. Like if there was a place where you could just go for information, you just take a half an hour every day instead of going to Facebook and spending 15 minutes looking at, your kids' baby pictures. There's nothing wrong with that. But instead of wasting 15 minutes before you actually get to the meat of what you're trying to do, you just go to the group and, you check in on, I don't know if you remember like the old school DWF forums and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like they were great places for information, and you can go there and you can search one place for, a problem that you had. And now if you do that on Facebook, you got to go to 20 Facebook groups and then search before you got to ask a question. Like that's a time suck.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, so I'm going to put all these places of where everybody can find you in the show notes. I want to say thank you, Jason, for joining me today. I'm glad that we were to get you on, and I'm glad to see that you've got you're doing well in your rebrand, and I hope that everybody does help you out as well, because the same way that you would help somebody else out if that opportunity came up. So paying it forward. So you can find the show notes from today's episode, where to find Jason and all the places, at imagely.com/podcast/96. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Google Play, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. So thank you again, Jason. And until next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's good to see your face again.
You as well.
You've been listening to the WordPress Photography Podcast. To listen to other episodes and to subscribe to the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more, please visit imagely.com/podcast.